Hello. There have been a few videos circulating on X and YouTube showing interviews asking British young people if they're proud to be British. You won't be surprised to discover that an alarming number of them said that they are not proud to be British. In other videos, they also say they wouldn't fight if called up to the armed services. And the question is, why? I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. OK, well, Nigel Farage blames the schooling, so I thought I'd play you this video so he can give his point of view before we carry on.
So only 41% of 18 to 27-year-olds are proud to be British. That's down from 80% in 2004. Why? What's going on? Look, I get it. If you're young in this country, you've been given a rotten deal. Lockdowns, it's really tough to buy a house. The cost of living is impossible. I know it's broken Britain, but I think there's something deeper here. I think the education system at school, and particularly at university, is willfully poisoning the minds of all of our young people about who we are as a country, our history, what we stand for. I think the whole thing is an absolute disgrace. And I promise you, if and when Reform win the next election, we're going to teach young people that this actually has been a very great country and it will be great again.
So is he right? Well, he is, if this article in Metro is any indicator. And I'm going to read you some of it. It says here, kids are finally being taught the truth. Of course, they're not proud of our history. So it's a given, isn't it? And look who is talking about this. A woman called Nadine Aspali. I'll give you a better picture of her. It's down here somewhere. This woman with this self-satisfied smirk on her face. What is it about the hijab and that smirk? Because I've seen it so many times. It's become almost a template facial expression. Anyway, this is an article that she got published in the Metro. And she is a teacher. A study has found the number of people proud to be British has fallen sharply, and honestly I can't say these results surprise me. Young people today, both my age mates in our 20s and 30s, but also teenagers I work with as a secondary school teacher, simply don't share the idealistic and often unrealistic view of Britishness that was more common in previous decades. What's wrong with idealism? The fact that she is wearing a hijab shows that she's idealistic, for her religion at any rate. And then she says, if you ask me, that's a good thing. So students who are demoralised, that's a good thing. Whereas nationalistic flag-waving pride might have been a hallmark of our parents' and grandparents' generations, possibly influenced by post-war nostalgia and more rose-tinted portrayal of Britain's role in the world in education and popular culture, today things look very different. Yeah, we don't have the role we used to have. That doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be proud of the torch that we bore, that we passed on to others. No doubt there will be those loud voices on the right who'll lament this decline in patriotism as an indication of the erosion of British values and another front in the culture war. In my view, these findings are a sign of how far we've come as a society. Yeah, well, you know what? I'm just surmising here. But I think a woman who dresses like this is very much imbued in a certain idealism, which she would be extremely annoyed if you tried to tell her it needs tearing down and replacing with less certainty. So idealism is all right for her, but yeah, not for the average British person. My pupils learn about Britain's role in the slave trade. Yeah, I'm sure she's not talking about the role in shutting down the slave trade. About colonialism, you mean that bit where they went to India, they went there for trading purposes, and they made agreements with local rulers, and then they built railways, a bureaucracy, and a language that unified all the small states and kept the Muslims out. Oh, of course, let's not talk about Muslim colonialism, because whereas Britain might be responsible for some deaths during its colonial exploits, it pales into total insignificance next to the mountains of, I've got to be careful what I say, the mountains of the things that are inside your head here, that were piled up by Muslim conquerors in India. Let's just stick to India here. Something like 200 million. That's not even a number you can imagine. But she's not talking about that. It's Britain's role. And world wars. World wars when Britain bankrupted itself fighting Hitler. In a way that doesn't perpetually cast the UK as the world saviour, but it was the world saviour when the entire continent of Europe was just lying down and spreading its legs. Britain was the only country that was actually getting to grips with the situation, and the people from like France and Norway and Poland, they came over here so that they could fight. What do you mean doesn't perpetually cast the UK as the world saviour? In my own subject, English, we no longer perpetuate the idea that the only voices of worth are those of white, wealthy and from Western countries. Well, you can see where she's going. And now you understand that self-satisfied smirk, don't you? So if you ask me, a decline in national pride is a worthy price to pay for a generation more aware of the reality of the world. What does she know about reality? And she is pretty proud of that scarf she wears round her head, which shows her religious affiliation. Listen, there's no problem with that. What I take issue with is that she is proud of her religious affiliation, but she won't allow pride in any British kid's national affiliation. Sorry, I've just got to get that face off my screen. I honestly don't think this woman should be teaching in any British school. Unfortunately, she's not the only one. There are many women who are not hijab wearers, who would be very happy to back her up. So she's not alone. It's just that this is a rather extreme example because she shows her idealism and then disallows it for everyone else. And she is also apparently not that ashamed of Muslim colonialism and slave trading, which started hundreds of years before the Brits or any other Europeans got to Africa. She doesn't seem even moderately aware of that. And I have to say that I don't think it's entirely outside the bounds of possibility that this woman has an interest in making those non-Muslim kids feel insecure and diminished, if you want my honest opinion. Now let's get that face away again. But yeah, she's not the whole story. There is something else, of course. And it's that young people may not feel proud to be British because they know there's something wrong. They see people being arrested for hurty words on Instagram. They see people like Tommy Robinson, whether or not they agree with him, but they see that the government is not acting honourably with a dissident political prisoner. There's a disconnect Our country's legal and social system isn't matching up to the values we're all supposed to have and hold. Kids know that they have to be careful about what they say, and that they should be afraid of the police, even if they're not doing anything actually illegal, because they're not sure anymore, like the rest of us, what is actually illegal. And that's all down to the way this government is behaving, which we have to admit is just like how the previous government was behaving, but this time on steroids and with an authoritarian streak that is something rather new. It used to be the case that there were people who described themselves as British who'd never even set foot in Europe, never mind in Britain. They were British citizens but born abroad, and they considered themselves British because what they meant was not that they'd been born here, but that they had a basket of ideas, beliefs and assumptions about the way the world should work, a way of thinking about these things that they would describe as British. But these things are being undermined now, as you see, and everyone knows that. And the kids know that too. That's why they're not saying they're not proud to be British. That's why they don't want to fight for Britain. What would they be fighting for if their teachers are constantly telling them in different ways that all those ideas, beliefs and assumptions are worthless? And apart from the teachers, the government itself is doing its damnedest to rip away the fabric of British life. Just look how Starmer has appointed an anti-British chief attorney, or whatever he calls himself, the top lawyer in Britain. A great pal of Starmer, and somebody who's always been on the side of the IRA or the handout people. And Starmer's government is just pulling everything apart. Just as a matter of a side issue, they're now talking about making drag hunting illegal. Now, I happen to disagree with their attitude to fox hunting. But there was some sort of an argument for it. But drag hunting, I mean, that's chasing, getting on your horse and chasing across somebody's fields. Why? Why would they decide to make that illegal? It's because the hunt is a way for country people to get together, to organise. Farmers tend to be somewhat isolated because of the nature of their work. But when it comes to hunting, they all get themselves organised together. They organise, they make connections, they have hunt balls and fundraisers and that sort of thing. And the government just hate that. And this whole thing about taxing family farms out of existence, it's all part and parcel of the same thing. But I digress. So, a lot of kids are talking about communism as a good thing. That's been a fashionable thing to talk about recently. And I'm inclined to believe it's not so much communism they want as some sort of clarity, a certainty, so they know where they stand. Because right now, British kids have no idea what we stand for. I'll tell you one thing, it won't be Ukraine. Just a minute, I'm on the side of Ukraine, and Starmer says he wants to send the army there. I was never in for that. And I'm quite sure he's not going to find any soldiers here willing to do that as well, because no one wants to follow Starmer. If there's one thing we do know, it's what Starmer stands for. And that's exactly 1/1000th of nothing. All right, well, yeah, that's it for today. Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.